السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Respected scholars, my brothers and sisters in Iman, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. As our dear moderator said, that there is barakah in the salawat and there is equal barakah in the response to a salam. So let's try again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahsan, jazakallah. The talk that I've been asked to give is a story that needs to be told. I was going to begin with hiding my identity, if that could be possible, but Sister Banin gave it away. So I need to change my tack a little bit. Just as she was, I was too born at the foothills of the highest mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro. And the scholars have talked about identity, and far be it for me to opine or give another opinion when our respected scholars have spoken, or even give a recommendation would be doing injustice to our great scholars. So my job here today is to share the story of a very small community. There are 7-point-something billion human beings on this planet. There's a 7.8 or whatever. We can't even count how many Khojas are there in the world. I don't know how they've counted 7 billion, but we'll take the number. That there are 7 billion human beings on this planet, out of which there are 1.8 billion Muslims, of which there are between 200 and 300, depending on who's counting, Shias, Shia Ithnaishri, on this planet. So given that context, and those who know this question, answer, please don't answer. I'd like those who can guess, what is the number of the Khoja Shia Ithnaishris on this planet? 110,000 is one offer. Any other offers? Any other takers? Well, you're almost correct, Sayyidina. We are under 150,000. So I said to myself, when Sayyid Hassan called me and gave me this topic, I said, why Khoja? So perhaps it could be, and a book has been written about that, that maybe because we are an endangered species, that there was this interest in the Khojas. So when we talk about identity, and Sister Banin has really done my job much easier for me, and I'll come to that point. But you know, identity is something which is always in a state of flux. I was born as a Muhindi, meaning Indian, in Tanzania. When I came to the UK as a student, I became a Paki. And then when I was almost about to leave the shores, I became a Muslim Briton, or a British Muslim, depending on how you classified yourself. And then when I land in the great land of Mr. Trump, he wasn't there at that time, thankfully, I was called a resident alien, and ultimately I acquired a US citizenship, and I became a Muslim American. Now when I go to my ancestral homeland, I am an NRI, a non-resident Indian, where they see dollar signs all over as an NRI. Those who have been there will attest to it. So identity is something that is in a state of flux. And therefore it is a formula which has got several variables in it, but a formula cannot be a formula. There are scientists here that if you did not have pi, there would be so much confusion. A formula cannot be a formula unless it has one constant in it. And I share this experience, which our sister has said, that that constant in that formula, whatever the identity has been, my identity, the constant has been the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. That is the constant. The identities can vary whichever way they can, if, and as our esteemed scholars have said, rightly so, that it is that faith value that binds us together. Sheikh Safdar said, are we culturalizing Islam or are we Islamizing culture? Well, my response to that is the two should not be looked as mutually exclusive. This community of the Khoja Shia Ithnashris, which has lived as a minority within a minority for the last 7 centuries, may have some small lessons for us. The idea of a community going through that it was the culture. You know, the Khojas are not specially endowed by God to be well organized as we are sometimes considered to be. What happens is that we carry with us the cultural affinity of the Gujaratis in Western India, where for 2,000 years there has been a set of rules as to how you organize society. These societies are organized in Sanskrit, they call it Sampradaya, a nizam, a special way, where each community had its own naat or its own jamaat or its own community. And when the Khojas separated from the Hindus, they formed the jamaat. The name Khoja is actually a phonetic corruption of the word Khwaja, which was given to our ancestors by Pir Sadaddin, who happened to convert us. It's a long story. If you're interested, I have a documentary film of 2 hours that explains how we became Khojas as we know it. But when we became Khojas, when we became that particular entity, it was that identity that carried with us and the idea of forming a community. Now, over 7 centuries, when we migrated to Africa, we lived under German rule in Tanganyika, under French rule in Congo, under Portuguese rule in Mozambique. Every colonial power was actually colonized, where Khojas were colonized by the Khojas. What the Khojas have done is they have outlived all those empires. And as our sister said, that for us seeking the homeland was truly to embrace the idea of mulk. Wherever, the Quranic idea of mulk, wherever we lived, that was homeland. And the Imam Barga that we had, we transcended all other boundaries and said that the Imam Barga, the Husseiniya that we have, is indeed our homeland. And that has been the secret source of success, of being able to keep the point. I'll end with this case study. There were 3 communities that left the shores of the Indian subcontinent around the same time as my ancestors did in the 1850s, or around that. There was a huge drought in India, and people had to either live in India and possibly die. Even my ancestors had their own cattle taken away by the British because they could not pay the taxes because of the drought that there was. So they had either to die in India or go across the sea and maybe find somewhere else. Well, as they migrated over to these lands, they lived under different cultures, and yet they were able to remain within the fold. While there were 2 other communities that left the Indian subcontinent, there were Sayyids who left from the UP, the Uttar Pradesh in India, area near Delhi and Lucknow and those, which was a seat of the Shia learning. And when they left, they went to Fiji. And there was another group from Bihar, Shia Ithnashris, which left to go to Guyana. Some of you may have heard of the Jose festival. If you Google it, it is a festival in the Caribbean where there is a carnival that is called the Jose festival. Indeed, that Jose festival is the remnant of the Ashura Julus that those people carried. They had lost everything apart from the Jose festival, which Nauzubillah now has a carnival, singing and dancing. That is what remained of those Shias who went from Bihar to go over to the Guyana. And then the Muslims who went to Fiji went, and they are mostly converted. in fact, almost wholly converted to Sunni Islam. They left their school of Ahlul Bayt because they were assimilated into the wider Sunni population in Fiji. At the same time, when the Khoja ancestors went to eastern shores of Africa, they were able to somehow maintain. I have been studying this for almost 3 decades. What is the difference? And I look at this, firstly, it was the idea of the Jamaat Bandi and the Naat, the community, that was able to keep them together, number one. Secondly, probably it was the proximity to the Indian shores, although the connections were not that many. And, last but not the least, it was a connection when the Khojas finally converted, after almost 600 years of vacillating between Hinduism and Islam and so on and so forth. When we finally converted, with the efforts of certain Muballighin, it was a connection with Ayatollah Zainul Abidin Mazandarani at that time, where he sent the Muballighs to Zanzibar, to Mumbai and all that, to be able to convert the Khojas. Since that time, the connection of the Khoja Shia Ithnashri community with the seat of Marjaiya, in particular in Najaf, has remained constant, and I believe that that has been one of the main factors in terms of the Khojas being able to retain the faith and culture and are able to practice that faith as compared to the 2 other communities that left the shores of India. So this is a case study in terms of how a minority can live within a minority where it has an anchor. Yes, we can be good citizens of the land that we live in, and we should, but it is the school of Ahlul Bayt. It is the Husayniyah, as the sister said, that has been our quest for a homeland as well as an identity of the hyphenated identity. She identified herself as a Khoja Shia Ithnashri Muslim. And that is our hyphenated identity. And I say this with the utmost humility, that I was asked to share this particular story so that we may learn some lessons as to how to live as a minority within a minority. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.